So you're now running your Google Business Profile, a PPC campaign, and your website. It's all ranking, you're getting consistent motivated sellers. How do we turn these motivated sellers into actual profit? I'm gonna show you in this video exactly how to capture the lead and close them. First thing you have to do is when these people come in inbound, they're gonna be motivated to sell for whatever reason, so it's gonna be a lot easier to talk to them than if you were making a complete cold call, but you need to make sure you ask these qualifying questions. The first one I always ask every time I get a motivated seller is, do you have any other offers or are you working currently with any realtors? The reason I ask this is because if they have other offers or they're working with a realtor, it's gonna tell you exactly pretty much how the conversation is gonna go. Now, doesn't mean the seller isn't motivated to sell by any means, but it's gonna tell you exactly if they have 3-4 other offers, it can dictate how you talk to these people and if they're also signed with a realtor who is planning on listing it. Then from here, once we get a good gauge on the conversation and understand how it's gonna go, we want the 4 pillars. And these 4 pillars is the timeline, motivation in selling, the price they want for the property, and the condition of the property. These 4 pillars are the most important thing because if at least 2 out of the 4 of these seem very motivating and they seem like, okay, this person's actually motivated and has a time crunch they need to sell on, then I would recommend scheduling that appointment when it's all over. Now, out of the 4 pillars, there's 2 of these questions that people don't like to answer very honestly. Now, getting the timeline and condition of the property is pretty simple because this isn't a very pressing question. Now, the pressing questions that comes on why you're selling the property and how much you want to sell the property for. Now, a lot of people won't tell you a price of what they actually want for the property, or they'll just tell you Zillow value. Now, if they don't give you a number at all, what I like to typically do is I like to reach out to these people and say, hey, I understand you don't maybe know what it's valued at, or you don't know exactly what you want, but the last thing I want to do is come in and lowball you, and I just want to make sure that we don't waste each other's time by going on a 15-20 minute appointment and making sure that we're in the same ballpark because, like I said, I don't want to waste any of your time and we don't want to waste any of ours. And after you say this, people respect you quite a bit more and they actually end up telling you a realistic number about 99% of the time if you portray this correctly. Then when you're asking somebody on why they're actually selling, you don't want to directly ask them why they're selling. People get very standoffish when you ask this question just because there could be a lot of underlying bad reasons on why they're selling the property that they don't really want to talk about. And so typically a better way to gauge this is by asking, okay, yes, if they're living in the property, you can ask them, where are you going to next? You know, maybe they're moving out of state or whatever, and it's gonna give you a better answer that you can kind of gauge maybe the situation that's going on, whether it's a divorce or anything like that. But if it's an empty property or they're a landlord or anything like that, you can ask them, okay, what are you gonna do when you sell the property? And just, this is a very easy question to ask and people don't feel standoffish when you ask this question. It's just kind of a filler question that people don't take too much offense to. Now, once you get the 4 pillars, you get the conversation going, you gauge how they're feeling and kind of how motivated they really are. If 2 out of the 4 pillars are actually very motivating, this is when you want to schedule an in-person appointment. So for example, if they want to sell within 30 days and they say the condition of the property is really bad, that's when you want to schedule an appointment because there could be underlying motivation there, even if they want a retail price for the property, right? But if, you know, for example, if they have a low price for the property and they have a very high reason on selling, like divorce or whatever, but they say their timeline's whenever, you could still go to the property. As long as 2 of the 4 reasons of these pillars show some signs of motivation, it's worth going on that appointment. And once you get in these people's living rooms, it is much easier to gauge these people and how they're feeling when you talk to them face to face and they realize you're actually a real person who actually buys houses. Because a lot of these people, they may be talking to nationwide people, they may have talked to other companies, but once you get in their living room, you're really gonna get the real story. You can really make a connection there so you can get the actual facts to now make them a correct offer. And one tip I like to use when making an offer is sometimes if people don't tell you a price at all, it's very difficult to make an offer because you don't know if you're coming in too low, too high, whatever. So what I typically like to do is I always like to start off with a market price. Like I always like to start off with, okay, if you listed with a realtor, this is the price that you could get on the market. Why I do this is because then it leaves them much more comfortable when we give them a lower offer because now they trust us and we're telling them, hey, you can get more for your house, but this is what we're able to offer. If you offer a cash offer right after you explain to them what they can get on the market with certain inconveniences and fees and all that, they're gonna trust you a lot more because they're like, wow, this person's really in my best interest. You know what? And if they take the on-market offer, they want to list on the market, that's just fine. That's just the way the game goes and you can get a commission referral. However, if they take the cash offer, which happens 9 times out of 10, even when you give the on-market number, it's because they now trusted you based on those numbers, and instead of actually lowballing them and coming in with just a low number, it doesn't turn them off and piss them off so that way they just ghost you, right? And give them the on-market number and then give them the low number. They're gonna be much more understanding and more room for negotiation because now they actually like you. And sometimes when you get these motivated sellers in, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna answer the phone pretty actively if you call them at least within a minute or two of them filling out your form. However, there's some times where people fill out a form and they simply just don't want to answer the phone. So this is where you need to be very, very diligent. Within the first week, you need to make sure you're calling them multiple times and texting them and leaving voicemails every single day until you get in touch with them. And if you still don't get in touch with them after a week, maybe you can dial it back a bit and start calling them maybe once a day or once every other day. And you have to continue following up with these people, because sometimes people get very impulsive and they go and look for home buyers near them. They fill out the form and they're so ready to sell, and then all of a sudden 10 seconds later they realize, oh, that was stupid, I don't actually need to sell, and they kind of get a clear head after a good night's sleep if they fill out your form late at night, which happens all the time. But if you keep in touch with these people, you keep constantly going further and continuing to get in touch with them, they will eventually answer. We had a deal that came in from our PPC campaign that we literally did not get in touch with for 4 straight months. Finally, that day he answered, got in there in the appointment, and actually ended up doing the deal, and we closed on it here in the next week, which is pretty insane, because you think that when these people come from Google, they're very motivated to sell, which 9 times out of 10, they are very motivated to sell, and they're gonna answer the phone pretty quickly. But on very rare occasions, you're gonna have that, and you need to make sure you are consistently following up like crazy. If you do all these things correctly, you're gonna have a lot of success when you actually start getting motivated sellers, because this is a very important part that a lot of people forget, is when you do get these sellers, you have to be able to convert them into profit.